The stars had never seemed so cold to Admiral Vextar as he stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching another world die. Through the massive viewport, the planet Kethmer burned with unnatural fire that consumed everything it touched. The mechanical swarm had arrived 3 days ago, and now nothing remained but glowing metal and the screams of the dying carried across space frequencies. "Sir, the evacuation ships report they are at maximum capacity," his communications officer reported, her voice trembling. "We can't save them all." Vextar's forearms clenched at his sides. In his 300 years of service to the Galactic Coalition, he had never faced an enemy like this. The Devourers had emerged from the void between galaxies like a plague of metal locusts, consuming entire star systems to fuel their endless reproduction. 17 species had united under the Coalition banner, sharing technology and wisdom for peaceful exploration, but none of their combined knowledge could stop this ancient horror. "How many systems have we lost?" he asked, though he dreaded. The answer, 47 confirmed, sir. The outer rim is completely gone. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of failing shields as debris from Kethmer struck their ship. Vextar watched a chunk of what had once been a beautiful city bounce off their energy barrier. Somewhere in that twisted metal had been families, children, dreams that would never be realized. "Sir, urgent message from Coalition Command," another officer called. "They're ordering a full retreat to the core worlds." "A retreat," Vextar repeated bitterly. "Running from sector to sector while they devour everything behind us? How long before we run out of space to retreat to?" His tactical officer, a tall being from the warrior species, stepped forward. "Admiral, there is another option. The archives speak of isolated species beyond our borders. Perhaps some would aid us in exchange for technology and membership." Vextar turned from the dying world. "You mean sending distress signals to unknown civilizations? That violates every first contact protocol we have." "With respect, sir, our protocols assumed we would survive long enough to use them." The truth of those words hit like a plasma bolt. Their careful diplomatic procedures meant nothing if everyone was dead. Vextar looked around his bridge at officers from 7 different species, all united in their desperation. They had tried everything else. "Prepare a broad-spectrum transmission," he ordered. "Send it on all frequencies in every mathematical language we know. Tell them we are dying, our worlds burn, and we offer alliance, technology, and friendship in exchange for aid." Meanwhile, billions of light years away, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was having the worst night of her career at the Arecibo II facility. The massive radio telescope had been picking up interference for hours, and she couldn't identify the source. Her coffee had gone cold 3 times while she adjusted frequencies and filters, trying to isolate the signal. "Elena, just go home," her colleague David called from across the control room. "Whatever it is can wait until morning." "No, this is different," she insisted, fine-tuning the reception equipment. "The pattern is too complex to be natural, but it's not from any Earth satellite I know." The signal suddenly cleared and Elena's breath caught. Mathematics. Pure, beautiful mathematics was flowing through the speakers, but in sequences she had never seen. Prime numbers, geometric progressions, and then something that made her heart race. The universal constant for pi, but calculated to thousands more decimal places than humans had ever achieved. "David, get over here right now," she whispered. Her colleague rushed over just as the mathematical sequence ended, and something impossible began. Language, clearly artificial language with consistent grammar patterns, repeated in what seemed like dozens of different versions. Elena's hands shook as she started recording equipment. "This is it?" she breathed. "This is actually it?" "Elena, you're scaring me. This is what? First contact." The message played for 6 hours straight, repeating in cycles. By dawn, Elena had called everyone she could think of. Within 12 hours, the world's best linguists, mathematicians, and cryptographers had descended on the facility. Within 24 hours, they had a rough translation. The message was simple and terrifying. "We are dying, our worlds burn. If any hear this, we offer alliance, technology, and friendship in exchange for aid. Time is short." They come for all living things, Please respond if you can hear this. We are the Galactic Coalition of 17 species, and we face extinction. President Marcus Thompson sat in the Situation Room, staring at the translation document. Around the table, the world's leaders participated via secure video link, their faces showing various degrees of disbelief and fear. Let me understand this correctly, the British Prime Minister said. Aliens are claiming they're under attack and asking for our help? That's what the message says, Elena confirmed from her seat at the table. The mathematics check out. This signal traveled faster than light somehow, which should be impossible but clearly isn't. The linguistic patterns are too complex to be a hoax. Or it's an invasion force trying to trick us into lowering our defenses, General Patricia Wells interrupted. Standard military doctrine for softening up a target is to make them think you're friendly. The Chinese representative leaned forward. Dr. Rodriguez, how long would it take them to reach Earth if they wanted to? Elena consulted her notes. Based on the signal source triangulation, probably weeks or months depending on their technology. But sir, I really think they're telling the truth. The mathematical proofs they included show scientific knowledge far beyond ours. If they wanted to attack us, why reveal their capabilities? Because they want us to surrender without fighting, Wells replied coldly. Thompson rubbed his temples. The decision he made in the next few minutes would determine humanity's future, and he had no good options. Trust unknown aliens who might be lying, or assume the worst and potentially ignore beings who desperately needed help. Then the room's communication system activated with an urgent alert. Mr. President, we have massive energy signatures appearing at the edge of the solar system. Objects are decelerating from faster-than-light travel. Every face in the room went pale. Thompson stood slowly, his military training taking over. How many objects? 3 confirmed, sir. Each approximately 2 kilometers long. They're not matching any known spacecraft design. Elena's eyes widened. Mr. President, they're here. The coalition ships are actually here. Thompson looked around the table at the faces of Earth's leaders. Some showed hope, others terror, but all showed the same realization. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and whatever came next would change everything. Ladies and gentlemen, Thompson said quietly, as of this moment, we are no longer making decisions just for Earth. We're making them for the entire human species. He turned to General Wells. Patricia, I want every defense system we have activated immediately. If these aliens are peaceful, we'll welcome them properly. If they're not, they'll learn why humanity survived every threat this planet ever threw at us. Sir, what about the message? They claim they need our help. Thompson stared at the alien translation document. General, in my experience, when someone shows up at your door asking for help while carrying weapons you can't match, you assume they're not really asking. Activate Protocol Omega. Wells smiled grimly. Yes, sir? If they want Earth, they'll have to take it from our cold, dead hands. Elena watched in horror as humanity's first response to contact with alien civilization was to prepare for war. She tried to protest, but Thompson had already moved on to deployment orders and contingency plans. Outside, the first coalition ships approached Earth peacefully. Expecting to meet new allies, instead, they were about to encounter a species that treated every unknown contact. Admiral Vexstar stood on his bridge, watching the small blue world grow larger on his screens. Earth looked so peaceful from space, with white clouds swirling over green and brown continents. It reminded him of his own homeworld before the Devourers came. For the first time in months, he felt something close to hope. Sir, we're receiving massive energy readings from the planet, his sensor officer reported. They appear to be activating some kind of defensive systems. Defensive systems? Vexstar's secondary arms twitched in confusion. Why would they need defenses? We sent peaceful signals. Unknown, sir, but the energy signatures are increasing rapidly. They're bringing something very powerful online. On Earth's surface, Commander Lisa Barnes stood in the newly constructed command center buried 3 miles beneath the Nevada desert. Around her, hundreds of technicians worked frantically at control stations that had been built in secret over the past decade. Protocol Omega was humanity's ultimate contingency plan, designed for the day when Earth faced an extinction-level threat. Status report on orbital platforms, she barked into her headset. Platform Alpha rising from Pacific Trench 7, weapon systems online in 30 minutes, came the reply. Platform Beta emerging from Atlantic Deep Point Defense Grid active. Barnes nodded grimly. For 20 years, humanity had been preparing for this day. Hidden shipyards in asteroid belts, weapons platforms disguised as research stations, and military technology that officially didn't exist. The world's governments had learned from history that when a more advanced civilization met a less advanced one, the results were rarely good for the weaker side. "Ma'am, the alien ships are requesting communication," her communications officer announced. "Ignore them. Standard invasion protocol is to keep the target talking while positioning for attack." High above Earth's atmosphere, massive structures began emerging from the oceans. What had appeared to be underwater research facilities revealed their true nature as weapons platforms rose on enormous hydraulic systems. Satellite networks that the public believed were for communication suddenly shifted position, revealing hidden particle beam arrays. Captain Torres piloted her fighter. Squadron from Luna Base watching in amazement as Earth transformed before her eyes. "Control, are those missile silos opening in the Sahara Desert?" "Affirmative, Captain. Every installation is coming online. This is what we trained for." Torres had been part of the secret Space Force for 8 years, but she had never seen the full extent of humanity's hidden preparations. Ships that were supposedly decommissioned were launching from concealed bases. Orbital factories that claimed to make consumer goods revealed themselves as weapon manufacturing plants. "My God," her wingmen whispered over the com. "We really were ready for this." On Vextar's flagship, alarms began sounding as sensors detected the true scope of human military capability. His tactical officer's membrane crest had turned bright red with shock. "Admiral, their technology level was completely wrong in our estimates. These energy readings suggest weapons that shouldn't be possible for their development stage." "What kind of weapons?" Vextar demanded. "Particle accelerators, fusion missiles, and something our computers can't identify." "Sir, they're not a primitive species at all. They've been hiding their capabilities." Vextar stared at the sensor data in growing alarm. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were revealing a military machine that had been built specifically to fight a technologically superior enemy. This wasn't a peaceful first contact. This was two civilizations preparing for war. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human military." "Command, put it through." Barnes' face appeared on the main screen, her expression hard and unforgiving. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander Lisa Barnes of the Earth Defense Force. You are in violation of Terran space. State your intentions immediately, or face the consequences." Vextar stepped forward, activating his universal translator. "Commander Barnes, I am Admiral Vextar of the Galactic Coalition. We sent peaceful messages requesting alliance against a common enemy. We come seeking aid, not conflict." "Your peaceful messages were received," Barnes replied coldly. "Along with your demonstration of faster-than-light travel and advanced technology. We've seen this pattern before in our own history. A more advanced civilization contacts a less advanced one, claims peaceful intentions, then conquers them." "Commander, you misunderstand our situation. We are refugees, not conquerors. Our worlds are being destroyed by an ancient enemy called the Devourers. We genuinely need your help." Barnes laughed bitterly. "Right, and I suppose you just happened to arrive with warships instead of relief vessels?" Vextar looked around his bridge in confusion. "These are exploration ships with basic defensive capabilities." "Commander, surely your sensors can tell the difference between military and civilian vessels." "Our sensors show ships 2 kilometers long with energy weapons and shield systems our best scientists can barely understand." "That's not peaceful exploration equipment." The conversation was interrupted as proximity alarms sounded on both sides. A human patrol ship had wandered too close to the coalition formation, and automated defense systems on both vessels had activated. Warning shots were fired into empty space, but the message was clear. Admiral, Vexstar weapons officer reported, the humans have some kind of quantum torpedo. Our shields absorbed it easily, but the technology behind it is remarkable for their supposed development level? Barnes was receiving similar reports. Ma'am, our Mark 7 quantum torpedoes barely scratch their shields. These aren't explorers. These are military vessels with advanced defensive systems. Both commanders stared at each other across the communication link, each convinced the other was lying. Vexstar saw a paranoid military leader refusing to believe. A desperate plea for help. Barnes saw a cunning enemy commander trying to trick humanity into lowering their guard. Commander Barnes, Vexstar tried one more time, I understand your caution, but every moment we waste, more worlds die. The Devourers consume everything in their path. If they follow our retreat route, they will find Earth eventually. And conveniently, you're here to protect us in exchange for what? Our resources? Our technology? Our submission? Your military assistance. Nothing more. Barnes cut the communication and turned to her staff. Analysis confirms their ships are heavily armed and shielded. Classic Volfin sheep's clothing scenario. All units prepare for defensive action. Across the solar system, both fleets began moving into combat positions. Human ships emerged from hidden bases throughout the asteroid belt, while coalition vessels formed protective formations around Vexstar's flagship. Neither side wanted to fire the first shot, but both were convinced the other was preparing to attack. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat in her laboratory, frantically trying to decode more of the alien transmissions. She had been working around the clock since the first message arrived, and she was beginning to understand fragments of their language. What she was reading made her blood run cold. David, look at this, she called to her assistant. I'm picking up background chatter from their ships. They're talking about something called Devourers, and the conversation patterns suggest genuine fear. Elena, everyone knows they could be faking radio chatter. Not like this. Look at the linguistic stress patterns, the repetition of certain phrases. This is how people talk when they're genuinely terrified. David, I think they're actually telling the truth about being under attack. She grabbed her phone and dialed the direct line to the White House that had been given to her for emergency contact. Mr. President, this is Dr. Rodriguez. Sir, I need to speak with you immediately about the alien transmissions. Dr. Rodriguez, unless you can prove these aliens aren't planning to invade us, I don't have time for academic theories. Sir, that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you. Based on my analysis of their communications, they're not invaders. They're refugees running from something that scares them more than death itself. The line went quiet for a moment. Doctor, even if that's true, they're still armed and dangerous. We can't take the risk. Elena stared at her translation notes, at the clear patterns of desperation and fear in the alien communications. Mr. President, what if we're about to start a war with the only people who can help us survive what's coming? But the line had already gone dead. Outside her window, she could see military aircraft heading toward the spaceports. Humanity's first contact with alien civilization was about to become humanity's first interstellar war, and Elena was the only person who understood. The war began with what both sides would later call an accident, though the truth was more complicated. Coalition science vessel Harmony was attempting to establish a direct communication link with Earth's internet systems to prove their peaceful intentions. The process required temporarily disabling a human communications satellite to prevent signal interference. Colonel Jake Morrison, commanding Earth's lunar defense grid, watched his displays as the satellite went dark. Hostile action confirmed, he announced to his staff. They just killed Comsat 7. Sir, it could be a malfunction, his communications officer suggested. Coincidentally happening while enemy ships are in orbit? I don't believe in coincidences. Morrison's finger hovered over the firing authorization button. All batteries, target the nearest alien vessel, on my mark. Above Earth, Captain Mordek of the Coalition warship Steadfast watched the human satellite go offline and cursed it in his native tongue. His species had been warriors for thousands of years before joining the coalition, and he recognized the signs of approaching battle. "Science vessel Harmony, you need to restore that satellite immediately," he transmitted. "The humans are interpreting your actions as hostile." "We're trying, Captain," came the reply, "but their technology is more complex than anticipated. Give us 10 more minutes. We may not have 10 minutes. Mordak was right. Morrison had made his decision. Fire. The lunar defense grid unleashed humanity's most advanced kinetic weapons, sending tungsten rods accelerated to significant fractions of light speed toward the Harmony. The alien ship's shields absorbed the impact with ease, but the intent was unmistakable. "All coalition vessels, we are under attack," Mordak announced. "Defensive positions only. Do not return fire unless directly threatened." But the situation was already spiraling beyond anyone's control. Admiral Vexstar watched from his flagship as more human weapons fired from hidden positions throughout the solar system. Missiles launched from Mars orbit, energy weapons fired from asteroid mining stations, and a massive railgun hidden on the far side of Earth's moon sent a projectile that actually penetrated his ship's outer shields. "Admiral, that shouldn't be possible," his chief engineer reported. "Our shields can stop anything short of a stellar-class weapon. How are their primitive kinetics getting through?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Rebecca Hayes had been working in her laboratory beneath the Rocky Mountains, analyzing energy readings from the alien ships since they arrived. She was one of Earth's top quantum physicists, and she had been conducting an experiment that military commanders didn't fully understand. "General Wells, this is Dr. Hayes," she transmitted from her lab. "I have a working prototype of something you need to see." "Doctor, unless it can punch through alien shields, I don't have time for science projects." "Ma'am, that's exactly what it does." Hayes had been studying the harmonic frequencies of the coalition ship's defensive systems, and she had discovered something remarkable. Their shields operated on quantum principles that could be disrupted by creating destructive interference patterns. Her prototype weapon didn't rely on brute force. It convinced the shields they weren't there. "Uploading targeting data to Lunar Base now," Hayes announced. "Colonel Morrison, try your next shot with these frequency modifications." Morrison was skeptical, but desperation made him willing to try anything. The modified tungsten rod struck the Harmony again, and this time it punched completely through the ship's shields, taking out their main engine. "Impossible," Vexstar whispered, watching the Harmony list helplessly in space. "Their technology level doesn't support weapons that can breach our defenses." Captain Mordak was thinking the same thing, but from a warrior's perspective. "Admiral, these humans fight differently than any species we've encountered. They're not using superior technology. They're using superior tactics." The battle spread throughout Earth's orbital space as both sides committed more ships. Human vessels emerged from hiding places that coalition sensors had missed, while alien ships demonstrated maneuverability that defied physics as humans understood it. But what shocked Vexstar most was how the humans fought. Coalition military doctrine emphasized honor, proportional response, and minimizing casualties. Humans fought like cornered animals. When a human destroyer was badly damaged, instead of retreating, it rammed itself into a coalition cruiser. When human fighters ran out of ammunition, they used their ships as missiles. "Sir, the humans are using suicide tactics," Mordak reported. "One of their pilots just flew his damaged fighter directly into our torpedo tubes." "Suicide tactics? Why would they waste their lives so carelessly?" "I don't think they see it as waste, Admiral. I think they see it as necessity." Mordak was beginning to understand something about humans that would reshape coalition military thinking for generations. These beings didn't fight wars. They fought for survival, and beings fighting for survival followed no rules except victory or extinction. The turning point came when Colonel Morrison received reports that human casualties were mounting. Instead of retreating, he activated contingency plans that horrified even his own staff. "Sir, you're ordering us to detonate nuclear weapons in our own orbital space," his weapons officer protested. "The radiation will dissipate in a few years. Alien occupation will last forever. Execute the order." The nuclear weapons weren't aimed at alien ships. They were designed to create electromagnetic pulses that would disable electronics in a wide area, including human systems. Morrison was willing to blind his own forces if it gave them a tactical advantage. Vexstar watched in amazement as the humans deliberately damaged their own infrastructure to deny it to the enemy. These beings would rather destroy their own cities than surrender them? Admiral, I'm receiving reports from our outer pickets, his communications officer announced. Long-range sensors are detecting unusual energy signatures approaching from deep space. What kind of signatures? Unknown, sir, but they're massive. Much larger than anything we've seen from the humans. Captain Mordick felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature on his bridge. He had seen those energy signatures before in nightmares and military briefings about ancient enemies. Admiral, request permission to cease hostilities immediately. Captain, we're in the middle of a battle. Sir, those aren't human ships approaching. Those are Devourer scouts. The words hit Vexstar like a physical blow. The mechanical horrors had followed their retreat route faster than anticipated. While the Coalition had been fighting humans, the real enemy had been closing in on both their species. Open a channel to all human vessels immediately. Vexstar ordered. Colonel Morrison's face appeared on screen, his uniform torn and his station sparking from battle damage. If you're calling to surrender, alien, you picked a bad time. We're just getting started. Colonel, you need to listen to me very carefully. Long-range sensors are detecting ships approaching your solar system from outside. They are not Coalition vessels. Morrison frowned. More of your friends coming to help? No, Colonel. Our enemies. The ones who destroyed our worlds. They call themselves Devourers and they consume entire planets to fuel their reproduction. If they found Earth, both our species are about to face extinction. The bridge fell silent as Morrison processed this information. Around him, his staff continued fighting a battle that might have just become irrelevant. You're telling me that while we've been shooting at each other, something worse is heading our way. Something infinitely worse, Colonel. And unless we stop fighting each other immediately, neither of our species will survive to see tomorrow. Morrison looked at his tactical displays, showing human and Coalition ships locked in combat throughout the solar system. Then he looked at the long-range sensor data his staff was just beginning to process. Unknown contacts, massive in scale, approaching from the direction of interstellar space. All human vessels, this is Colonel Morrison. Cease fire immediately. I repeat, all units cease fire and stand by for new orders. As the guns fell silent, both fleets turned their sensors outward, toward the approaching nightmare that would test everything they thought they knew about war, survival, and what it meant to fight for. The first Devourer scout entered the solar system like a metal cancer made manifest. Through the combined sensors of human and Coalition fleets, both species watched in horror as something the size of a small moon materialized at the edge of Pluto's orbit. It wasn't a ship in any conventional sense. It was a machine that consumed reality itself. Jesus Christ, Colonel Morrison whispered, staring at his displays. What is that thing? Admiral Vexstar's voice came across the communication link, heavy with the weight of terrible experience. That, Colonel, is why 17 civilizations united under the Coalition banner, and why we came to you for help. The creature moved toward Pluto with deliberate precision, and both fleets watched helplessly as mechanical tentacles hundreds of kilometers long reached out to embrace the dwarf planet. The process was sickeningly efficient. Matter converters stripped away Pluto's surface layer by layer, feeding the raw material into construction bays that immediately began building more Devourers. Sir, we're detecting massive structural changes. In the contact, reported Ensign Williams from his sensor station, it's single quotes S ... growing. Growing how? Morrison demanded. It's using Pluto's mass to build copies of itself. Current estimate suggests it will complete 3 full-sized units within 6 hours. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had finally been cleared to join the military command center, and she stared at the readings with the trained eye of someone who understood both alien technology and physics. My God, it's a von Neumann machine. A self-replicating constructor, but designed for warfare instead of exploration. General Patricia Wells, who had joined the command from Washington, studied the tactical displays with growing dread. "Doctor, how many more are out there?" "Based on coalition transmissions, I've decoded thousands, possibly millions. They've been consuming star systems for millennia, building more of themselves with each conquest." Captain Mordaugh's transmission crackled through the speakers from his warship. "Human commanders, coalition records indicate that the Devourers were created by a species that existed before our oldest civilizations. They were designed to be the ultimate weapon, but something went wrong. They consumed their creators and have been spreading across the galaxy ever since. And now they're here," Wells said grimly. "How long do we have?" Tech specialist Creolon from Admiral Vextar's ship had been monitoring Devourer communications, and her voice carried a tremor of panic when she broke into the channel. "Commanders, urgent update. The lead unit has detected our energy signatures. From the recent battle, it's signaling to the main fleet." "Main fleet?" Morrison asked, though he dreaded the answer. Conservative estimate based on hyperspace distortion suggests 50 to 80 capital-class Devourers, plus construction ships and harvester units. They will arrive within 18 hours. The command center fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of technicians working frantically at their stations. Morrison looked around at faces that reflected his own realization. Earth's entire military, combined with the coalition fleet, would be facing an enemy that consumed planets for breakfast. "Admiral Vextar," Morrison said finally, "I believe we owe you an apology and an explanation." Vextar's image appeared on the main screen, showing a being whose alien features couldn't hide the exhaustion and grief of someone who had watched worlds die. "Colonel, explanations can wait. Right now we need to coordinate our defense before." An alarm klaxon cut him off as every sensor in both fleets registered the same impossible reading. The Devourer at Pluto had finished its first replication cycle, and now 3 mechanical monstrosities were advancing on Neptune. "New contact bearing 27 Mark IV, Williams announced. "It's big, sir." "Really big." The main Devourer mothership dropped out of hyperspace between Mars and Jupiter, and its dimensions defied comprehension. Dr. Hayes, monitoring from her laboratory, ran the numbers 3 times before she believed them. "General Wells, this is..." "Dr. Hayes, ma'am, the approaching vessel is approximately 800 kilometers in diameter. For reference, that makes it larger than most of our major cities." Wells closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. When she opened them, her expression had hardened into something that would have made her ancestors proud. "Dr. Hayes, what's the status on that quantum weapon prototype you were working on?" "Ma'am, it's completely theoretical. I've only tested it on computer simulations, and the power requirements would drain the entire North American power grid." "Doctor, in approximately 17 hours, we're going to be facing an enemy that eats planets. Theoretical weapons are better than no weapons." "How fast can you build it?" "General, even if I could build it, we'd need a delivery system. The weapon has to be placed inside the target to be effective, and I don't think they're going to invite us aboard for tea." Captain Torres, who had been listening from her fighter squadron, activated her communication system. "General, my pilots. And I volunteer for delivery duty." "Captain, you understand this would be a one-way mission?" "Ma'am, if those things aren't stopped, it's all going to be a one-way mission anyway." Admiral Vextar had been monitoring human communications, and he spoke up with something that might have been admiration in his voice. "General Wells, coalition records indicate that the Devourers have never encountered a species with quite your approach to warfare. Perhaps that gives us an advantage." "What kind of advantage?" "Coalition military doctrine emphasizes honor, proportional response, and preservation of life. We fight to win while minimizing casualties. Humans appear to fight to win regardless of casualties. The Devourers are programmed to adapt to enemy tactics, but they may not be prepared for opponents who treat every battle as a potential extinction event." Morrison nodded slowly. Admiral, you're talking about total war doctrine. Everything we have, everything we are, committed to stopping them no matter what it costs. Colonel, from what I observed during our recent conflict, humans already fight. That way instinctively. General Wells looked around the command center at the faces of officers from both species, united for the first time by the shared knowledge that they faced something that would accept nothing less than the complete annihilation of all organic life. Ladies, gentlemen, and allies, she announced, as of this moment, we are no longer the Earth Defense Force or the Galactic Coalition. We are the last defenders of everything that lives, thinks, and dreams in this corner of the universe. She turned to Dr. Hayes' communication link. Doctor, you have 16 hours to build me a planet killer. Use every resource we have. Ma'am, what if it doesn't work? Wells looked at the tactical display showing mechanical nightmares consuming the outer solar system, converting the mass of worlds into more instruments of destruction. Then we make sure they remember that Earth and her allies don't surrender. We make them pay such a price for this system that they think twice before attacking the next one. Torres gunned her fighter's engines, leading her squadron toward the construction bays where human and coalition engineers were working together for the first time. Ma'am, understood. If we can't save ourselves, we'll at least show these machines. What happens when they threaten humanity? The combined fleets began moving into defensive positions around Earth and Mars, while in laboratories and factories across both civilizations, scientists and engineers worked frantically to create weapons that had never been tested against an enemy that had never been defeated. Behind them, mechanical horrors consumed Neptune's moons, growing stronger with each passing hour and preparing for a battle that would determine whether organic intelligence. The final battle began at Jupiter's orbit, where the combined human coalition fleet made their stand against the approaching devourer swarm. 53 mechanical monstrosities advanced in perfect formation, each one larger than Earth's biggest cities, their metal surfaces crawling with weapons that could shatter moons. Commander Lisa Barnes stood on the bridge of the hastily retrofitted battleship Defiance, watching her tactical displays with the calm of someone who had accepted that death was probably inevitable, but defeat was not. Beside her, Coalition wingleader Thex Ara monitored their alien allies, her 4 eyes tracking friendly contacts that represented species from across the galaxy united in desperate purpose. Human vessels, this is Admiral Vexstar, came the transmission from the Coalition flagship. Our combined fleet numbers 300 ships. The enemy has 53 capital units plus escort craft. By any reasonable military analysis, we should retreat. Barnes activated her communication system, her voice carrying across both fleets with the weight of absolute conviction. Admiral, humanity stopped using reasonable military analysis the moment we learned our planet was threatened. All ships. Execute Battle Plan Omega. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. Assuming anyone survived to build military academies, the human fleet didn't advance to meet the enemy. Instead, they scattered in seemingly random directions, leaving the coalition forces confused and exposed. Commander Barnes, your ships are abandoning formation, Vexara protested. Negative, wing leader. We're implementing the Stalingrad Protocol? The coalition officer's translator struggled with the reference. I do not understand this term. It means we trade space for time, and we make them pay for every meter with blood and metal. The human ships spread throughout Jupiter's orbital space, hiding behind moons, inside the planet's radiation belts, and among the debris of mining operations. When the Devourers arrived, they found not a traditional battle line but a 3-dimensional maze of ambush points and killing fields. The first Devourer to enter the trap zone was immediately hit by coordinated fire from 12 different directions. Human ships emerged from hiding, fired everything they had, then disappeared back into cover before return fire could find them. The mechanical giant's shields held, but cracks appeared in its armor. Impossible, transmitted Captain Mordock from his position near Europa. Their weapons shouldn't be able to damage Devourer hulls. Dr. Rebecca Hayes answered from her laboratory aboard the research vessel Einstein. Captain, we're not trying to destroy them with brute force. We're using quantum resonance to make their own armor work against them. Hayes had spent the last 16 hours working with coalition scientists to create weapons that exploited fundamental flaws in Devourer design. The machines were built to adapt to conventional attacks, but they couldn't adapt to physics itself, being weaponized against them. All units, Hayes' protocol is confirmed effective, Barnes announced. Continue hit-and-run tactics. Make them chase us through the debris fields. What followed was unlike any space battle in recorded history. The Devourers, programmed for efficiency, tried to maintain formation and advance systematically. The humans treated space like an urban battlefield, using cover, misdirection, and sacrificial attacks to create chaos in the enemy ranks. Wing leader Thexara watched in amazement as a human destroyer deliberately flew into a Devourer's weapon range, absorbed massive damage, then rammed itself into the machine's sensor array before exploding. These beings fight like each battle is their species' last day of existence. Wing leader, Barnes replied grimly, as far as we're concerned it might be. The coalition forces, initially confused by human tactics, began to adapt. Their superior technology combined with human strategic thinking created combinations the Devourers had never encountered. Coalition ships provided cover while human vessels made suicide runs. Human fighters guided coalition torpedoes through defensive screens using their smaller size and unpredictable flight patterns, but the real shock came when the Devourer mothership, a mechanical nightmare the size of Earth's moon, advanced toward the inner solar system. Admiral Vexstar contacted all human command. Human fleet, that vessel is beyond our combined capability to destroy. Coalition records show it has consumed star systems single-handedly. General Wells, monitoring from Earth's command center, looked at Dr. Hayes' final report and made a decision that would define humanity's reputation across the galaxy. All ships, this is Earth Command, Dr. Hayes' quantum weapon is ready, but delivery requires a volunteer mission into the mothership's core. Captain Rachel Torres, leading the 47th Fighter Squadron, immediately responded. Earth Command, we volunteer. Captain, you understand the weapon is untested and potentially unstable? Ma'am, understood. What's the worst that could happen? We all die? Torres led her squadron toward the mothership, dodging defensive fire that could vaporize capital ships. Coalition teleportation technology got them inside the massive structure. But from there they had to fight through corridors filled with self-repairing mechanical defenses. Torres to fleet, she transmitted as her fighters battled through the mothership's interior. This place is like a mechanical hive. The walls are alive and trying to kill us. Rachel, how much further to the core? Hayes asked from her monitoring station. Unknown, Doc. We're following power conduits, but this thing is bigger inside than outside. I think it's using spatial distortion technology. Torres lost 2 fighters to automated defenses, then 3 more to mobile hunter-killers that emerged from the walls themselves. By the time her remaining ships reached the central core, only she and her wingmen survived. Torres to Earth Command, she reported, looking at a quantum reactor the size of a city block. I'm looking at something that shouldn't exist. This thing is drawing power directly from quantum foam. Captain, can you place the weapon? Affirmative. But the quantum field is already destabilizing just from our presence. Doc, whatever this weapon does, it's going to happen fast. Torres manually armed Dr. Hayes' prototype, a device that weaponized quantum uncertainty itself. The theory was elegant and terrifying. Instead of trying to destroy the mothership, the weapon would convince reality that the mothership had never existed. Rachel, get out of there, Hayes urged. Negative, Doc. Someone needs to make sure this thing detonates properly. Besides, where exactly would we go? This whole system is about to become a quantum anomaly. Torres held the detonator, watching as the mothership's defenses converged on her position. Around her, mechanical nightmares that had consumed countless worlds prepared to end her life. For Earth, she whispered and triggered the device. The explosion didn't follow normal physics. Reality itself seemed to hiccup as the quantum weapon created a cascade of probability, collapse that spread throughout the mothership's structure. For a brief moment, the massive machine existed in a state of quantum superposition, simultaneously present and absent. Then physics chose absence. The mothership simply vanished, leaving behind a void in space-time that slowly healed itself. The remaining Devourer fleet, suddenly cut off from their command structure, began behaving erratically. Some continued attacking, others tried to retreat, and several simply stopped moving entirely. Admiral Vextar stared at his sensor readings in disbelief. "Commander Barnes, what exactly did your scientists build?" "Something that convinced the universe that the biggest threat to organic life never existed," Barnes replied. "Unfortunately, Captain Torres convinced the universe she never existed either." The surviving Devourer units, faced with an enemy that could literally erase them from reality, made a decision that would puzzle xenologists for centuries. They retreated. Not just from the solar system, but from local space entirely, fleeing toward the galactic rim as if something had finally taught them the meaning of fear. As the mechanical swarm disappeared into hyperspace, both fleets surveyed the aftermath. They had won, but at a cost that sobered even veteran warriors. The human fleet had lost 60% of its ships, and the coalition forces had suffered similar casualties. "Admiral Vextar," General Wells transmitted from Earth, "on behalf of humanity, we accept your offer of alliance. We also offer our deepest apologies for shooting at you when you arrived." Vextar's reply carried something that might have been laughter. "General, after witnessing how your species approaches warfare, I believe shooting at us first was probably the most reasonable thing you could have done." Wing Leader Vexara, studying the battle recordings, made an observation that would be repeated in coalition military academies for generations. "Admiral, I have analyzed human tactical doctrine during this engagement. They do not fight wars. They fight for extinction or survival, and they treat every enemy as an existential threat to their species. Is that a problem, Wing Leader?" "Sir, I recommend that we never give them reason to consider us an existential threat." The story concluded with Earth's integration into the Galactic Coalition, but not as a junior member seeking protection. Humanity joined as the species that had taught the galaxy's oldest nightmare the meaning of fear. Coalition records would note that humans approached warfare with such absolute commitment that they redefined what victory meant. In the years that followed, when other species asked Coalition representatives about Earth, they would receive a simple warning: those beings respond to threats as if reality itself depends on their survival. Do not give them reason to believe. You threaten their existence. The Devourers, for their part, marked the Sol system in their navigational databases with a notation that translated roughly to dangerous, contains species that weaponizes physics and treats mutual destruction as acceptable outcome. And in the depths of space, human and coalition ships continued their patrol routes, hunting down the remaining Devourer cells with the methodical determination of a species that had learned the most important lesson in the universe: when survival is at stake,